Greetings, comrades, and welcome to How the Red Was Won, a podcast about organizing in the South, Texas, fascism, and how to fight back. I'm your host, Jen Big Nasty, and just a quick reminder off the bat, if you like this project and would like to support it financially, you can find me on Patreon. Right now, I just started a straight read of R. Palma Dutt's Fascism and Social Revolution. And if you'd like to be able to listen to that right away, instead of having to wait for it to drop to the free feed, go ahead and subscribe. Today, not doing a theory episode today, I have a guest. I was going to say in-house. We're not in-house. We are actually thousands of miles away. But thanks to technology, we're practically in the same room. I have a fairly new friend and comrade of mine that I met recently, a couple of months ago. His name is Jacob. He is on the podcast, The Socialist Shelf, along with Lenore and Ryan, and he is an activist in Georgia. So welcome to the podcast, Jacob.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. You've been on Socialist Shelf and we had a great time, so now I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
So yeah, hopefully I can deliver. Y'all been doing some good stuff over here.
Oh yeah, thanks. So it's funny, the other day I actually tweeted about how I hate it when podcasters interview other podcasters about podcasting.
Yeah.
It kind of drives me crazy. But because that is how we met, I'd like to just start off talking a little bit about your podcast before we jump into the on the ground work that
For
you're
sure.
doing over there. So tell me a little bit. I know about it, but tell my listeners a little bit about the Socialist Shelf.
For sure. So we basically are a podcast that we talk about. We say good books. We say read good books and organize yourself. That's kind of the message of the podcast. We started as a fiction podcast about 2.5 years ago. Now we also do nonfiction, though we don't really do kind of theory like you do over here on this show. There's great shows like this and others that do that kind of stuff. What we like to do is we like to read books that are more, we've covered everything from, Lord of the Rings to Battle Royale to Hillbilly Elegy to evangelical Christian literature to We Had You On for Ishmael to talk about just a whole variety of things. And we like to talk about the intersection of history, the author, their background, their ideology, the material circumstances that influenced them, the way the world was at the time of writing, and how it shaped them towards creating what they created. The work, we talk about it on its merits. We talk about it, what it teaches us, talks about, shortcomings, its successes, what we can take away from it. And, ultimately we try to have a pretty good time as well. Me and Lenore and Ryan have a lot of fun. And then now every month we have a sub-series called Article Brain, which is brought to us by our good friend, not our good friend, Ezra Klein. We make jokes about him. We did an abundance episode. People were like, more like this. We're like, do you hate us? Clearly our listeners hate us. But basically every month now we each bring an article to the pod that the other two have not read to drive the other two crazy and to get into what is going on with just the mindset of article culture. That's going to mostly be like a what is wrong with the New York Times monthly installment, but that's going to cover, current events, which we've asked more for, and just that kind of thing. And also getting into some, modern literature, which is important. We're breaking down a lot of stuff that happened a long time ago. Most of the time, it's important to be critical of the now. So that's what we do. We have a good time with it. If you're interested, listen to the episode that Jen was on, because that was a lot of fun.
Well, hell yeah. 2 hours on Ishmael. It was so fun to reread that book too. It's not something I would have just done on my own. And so y'all giving me the opportunity to put down capital for a minute and pick up a fiction book that I had enjoyed 20 years ago was really nice.
Yeah, we see that you got to read Ishmael. We made Josh Borman read Compassionate Capitalism and Every Young Man's Battle. So,
That sounds terrible.
It's not all been equal. We've had guests who have really destroyed their brains.
Well, I got to choose, which was nice.
Yes, you did.
And I appreciate that. I listened to that first Article Brain episode about the abundant stuff, and I really like that idea too. And it's just for the three of y'all. I think it's a cool idea to where the other two can kind of take a week off and not have to read anything and
Mm-hmm.
just jump in and be like, why are you making me listen to this? As like torture fun. Y'all seem like you all really like each other too, which is,
We
I
do.
think, important.
We knew each other from organizing prior to making the show. So
Very cool. Okay, so let's jump into what the hell is going on in Georgia. I'll admit that I am not up to date on a lot of this stuff. You know, I had a few things I specifically wanted to talk about, and we can talk about also literally anything that's going on that you want to address. I haven't even I guess technically I've been to Georgia. It's the only time I've ever had to like sprint across an airport. Was the Atlanta airport to make a connecting flight from Washington D.C. to Austin, and so that's literally my only experience in Georgia, unfortunately. But yeah, tell me a little bit about what's going on the ground there. We can start with Cop City, or we can start with kind of whatever you want to start with.
yeah, so some background. You know, Georgia is where I've lived the vast majority of my life. I was technically born in Tennessee, which is, you know, just a hop and a skip over. But I've lived in Georgia a vast majority of my life. I've lived in both rural Georgia, sort of suburban Georgia, and also Atlanta, where I currently reside. Though I do expect one day to be back in a rural area, just kind of what my vibe is. But I do love Atlanta, and I do love Georgia. I've told people have asked me, you know, if things get really bad, whatever, and I'm like, I'm not leaving. This is my spot, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where I'm supposed to be. Um, Georgia as a state is very interesting to me because it is a incredibly fast growing state. It has been rated for the last 10 years by a lot of metrics the best state in the country to do business. Now that's do
Ooh,
business. That's not
yeah.
necessarily the best state in the country to live
I'm like, oh,
or
that sounds
standard of
great.
living.
Oh no,
Yes,
that
that is
that
something that our governor touts quite a bit, is that we're the
yeah.
best state in the country to do
That usually
business.
means like low corporate taxes, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Low corporate taxes or offered offers of subsidies very often.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Texas does that
Very
as well.
significant subsidies, tax
Mm-hmm.
breaks, things like that for corporations,
Mm-hmm.
um, and also very low union density relative to the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the country. Though union density isn't anywhere where it needs to be in any state in the country, the South especially, it's like that. Now, Georgia, though, also, of course, is the home of a lot of while having a lot of reactionary impulses, a lot of conservatism. Obviously, the Georgia Republican Party has kind of ruled Georgia for a long time, continues to. The history of a lot of struggle, the civil rights movement, very very heavily coming out of Atlanta. Obviously, Martin Luther King Jr. Based out of Atlanta. A lot of work with SNCC came out of Atlanta. A lot of long history of struggle, all the way back to, I mean, going back forever. I love to, if you ever want a heartening story, look up the Atlanta washerwoman strike of the 1800s. That's a great labor story. So there's a long history of struggle here, and I think similar to, in a lot of ways, to Texas, that like the contradictions are extra sharp in a lot of these spots,
Mm-hmm.
and you see it, nowhere sharper than in Atlanta, which is until very recently, and has been for most of its history, a majority black city. It is still it is now actually not majority black city until as of very recently because of gentrification and
Hmm.
rising costs.
Wow.
Um,
I didn't realize that.
yes, yeah, which is obviously, don't, it goes without saying what a shame that is. And
Yeah.
but you see this struggle in the heart, and you even see Georgia now considered, the new battleground state, with 2020 Georgia flipping, with us having Warnock and Ossoff
Mm-hmm.
as our senators, as Democrats, kind of now considered this battleground state because of the new generation and stuff like that. Of course, that didn't. 2024, it was taken pretty solidly by Trump, and I would also argue that the only reason that the Republicans don't hold one Senate seat is because they ran Herschel Walker.
Right.
Um,
It was a bad
and
campaign. Yeah.
yeah, and he like lied about being a police officer, like things like that. Just like just a bad campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a very conservative state, but it's not so conservative that it's like there's a lot of liberal tendencies and there's a lot of truly radical tendencies as well, and that's been expressed through things like the Stop Cop City movement. If
Mm-hmm.
I certainly don't have time to give the whole history on it, and I would really recommend people read Mariah Parker's new book, No Cop City, No Cop World, which just came out a couple months ago from Haymarket Books, if you really want like an in-depth look at the movement. But what I'll say is basically, like everywhere, the Georgia police have been increasingly militarized. And here in Georgia, we have the GILI program, which is the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange, which cooperates directly with Israel,
Mm.
where you have Georgia police going over to Israel to learn Israeli tactics for how they suppress specifically, Palestinians in the West Bank.
Hmm.
And you have a lot of exchange of military hardware, tactics, things like that. And right down to in Israel, something that has been trained on significantly is a place called Little Gaza. It's a training ground in Israel for IDF and police for those sort of operations. That's where they train ahead of time. And the idea got carried over by our very own Democrat-run city council here in Atlanta, where they decided that sounded like a great idea. We need one of those right here in Georgia, and that was proposed years ago. But after the 2020 movement, when in 2020 the streets of Atlanta couldn't be held by the cops for weeks,
Hmm.
there was really like you heard about autonomous zones elsewhere. There were also autonomous zones here that you
Mm.
didn't get as much, especially after Rayshard Brooks' murder.
Hmm.
Um, you had just a really militant mass movement where you had a mayor trying to bring rappers on stage to beg people to not like Killer Mike and
It was
stuff to
Killer
beg
Mike. I
people.
was gonna say I thought it was Killer Mike. That was one of the
Killer
more
Mike came,
embarrassing
yeah.
things. Yeah, that was
Killer Mike came on
terrible.
stage wearing a hat that said "Kill your masters," and he said, "Everyone go home." Um,
Jesus
and
Christ.
yeah, uh, make it make sense, right? But like that's
Right.
the way that the movement was, and so
Hmm.
the response to that, of course, was more police militarization. And you have
Yes.
Cop City, you
Hmm.
have the Atlanta, training center that they have built, not even in the Atlanta city limits. It's actually an unincorporated DeKalb, and they
Hmm.
destroyed the Weolani Forest. The
Hmm.
fight, a lot of it, there was really environmentalists were raising the alarms very early on, even honestly before a lot of anti, carceral and abolitionist activists. It was environmental activists who originally really raised the bell. Um, and we've seen the devastating effects that were warned. We've seen
Hmm.
more flooding because these old growth forests, where I've lived, we've had numerous floods that have really caused significant damage. We have seen more water pollution. We have seen communities just dealing with all kinds of really like horrible pollution, horrible problems. You have
Hmm.
this forest that is one of the oldest forests in North America, destroyed to build this police militarization zone where they
Hmm.
can train. I mean, they've got regions where they've got helipads, they've got places they can train with RPGs, they've got mock downtown. They've got, I mean, it's a playground for them. They've got in one spot they just have a huge slab that's hundreds of yards long of concrete, and they were just like, oh, we can practice driving, like and they're practicing like pit maneuvers and things like that.
Wow.
Um,
Is it
and the rest
open?
of the
Open and functioning?
it is
Open and
officially
functioning.
open as of
Yeah.
May. Now, what I
Wow.
will note though is there was a significant resistance against this, and the rally cry of like "Stop Cop City" was heard around the world.
Hmm.
And the movement, people have been saying, "Oh, well, the movement failed." Delayed the opening of this facility by a year and a half, cost the
Hmm.
city hundreds of millions of dollars, and also have embarrassed the city of Atlanta in
Yeah.
really deep ways. That said, yes, no, we didn't abolish the police state with one movement. Sorry.
Sorry.
um,
Yeah. Oops. My
my
bad.
bad. And again, the book gets into that very well. It's not my book, but I'm shilling for it because
Yeah.
Mariah
I'll
is
link to it
is
too.
on
Yeah.
the ground, really great, really
Hmm.
great. Um, but yeah, the movement. I mean, it started with people raising the alarms, and then people were setting up encampments in the forest, which
Hmm.
were brutally suppressed and led
Hmm.
to the murder of Tortuguita, someone in the encampment. They raised just very heinous lies about
Hmm.
the manner of their death, but this has been, you know, repeatedly debunked.
Hmm.
Um, there was great violence done against protesters, peaceful protesters. There was a music festival that was violently disrupted.
Hmm.
Um, and we have dozens of people who face RICO charges now. We're
Right.
facing basically being acted like they're organized crime. That is including people who did not even go to protest, people who were just doing bail funds, which is incredibly concerning.
Hmm.
Um, you have people who are running bail funds who got you know their doors busted down by the Atlanta police
Yeah.
and dragged to court. And the right to a speedy trial has absolutely been denied. So many of these people, we're only now getting trials for a lot of these people. Um,
They've been held this whole time.
Some of them have
Some of
been
them have.
held, some of them
Yeah.
have been out on bail, but they have, regardless, been allowed to be smeared in the media to a
Right.
city that, I mean, you're going to have trouble with the jury at that point.
Right.
So the RICO cases are continuing, and the first case was finally brought this summer
Mm-hmm.
against Ayla King, and it was immediately declared a mistrial and restarted with a new jury, even though her legal team was very happy with the jury that they had been able to select. The whole thing was thrown out and restarted over. So that's what we're just this endless thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
would say for that, what we've been just trying to do is have a consistent presence of people showing up at the courtroom when it's a Zoom thing, showing up
Mm-hmm.
in the Zoom meeting. I it's both a protest thing, it's a solidarity thing, it's a we need to be donating to the campaigns, and there
Right.
is fundraising happening for that in a variety of ways. Um, to be perfectly honest, the movement is not as militant as it was, just because you can't sustain that for so long, and there's a lot of air taken out of the sails. But it is
Mm-hmm.
really important that we're protecting these people. That we protect our political prisoners, and we also try to keep people from becoming political prisoners in the first place if we
Right.
can. And it also sets a horrible precedent. I mean, if you can do RICO charges against someone that the evidence is, oh, they were at a music festival in a forest somewhere,
Right.
and that's the extent of the evidence, and then they say, well, a car was burned 10 miles away, you were here at this music festival expressing anti-police sentiments, we can lock you up for 20 years, right? Like,
Right.
we can see where this is going, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And why this is a problem. And we have seen, obviously, I mean, Republicans are all for it, and we've seen our Democratic lawmakers be either just straight up deceptive or
Mm-hmm.
or not backing it. We have not got, I mean, champions like John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams and all these people. They're nowhere to be seen.
Right.
And we have our mayor Andre Dickens, who, after a 500,000 people in the city signed petition saying that there was not, or hundreds of thousands of people signed a petition saying that they wanted a referendum on Cop City,
Mm-hmm.
which the bar was already set obscenely high for what it takes to get a referendum.
Mm-hmm.
And legally, by every standard, it was confirmed that yes, this petition is legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
One, they posted the names and addresses of everyone who signed the petition online. The city of Atlanta did
The whole thing. Wow.
the whole thing. Now, it was like half the city, so it almost doesn't matter.
Right.
but
But still.
but
Yeah.
still, and then you have immediately Andre Dickens, our mayor, go on NPR and say public safety will never be something that comes to the ballot box. That's not something that's up for debate. And the movement
Wow.
spent so much. I mean, I spent a lot of work getting people to sign, and someone has to put down their address and their
Mm-hmm.
name and their whatever, and that's a lot. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot out of people.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of thousands of signatures. So the movement has been really multifaceted too, though, and then so. But the city has been forced to contend with it, and right now the phase of the struggle is very much against the legal attacks on our activists,
Mm-hmm.
because the more protection we have for people feeling like they can go out without immediately getting crushed, the
Mm-hmm.
better we can do. But it's a dark situation. But I want to note that they're doing it because they're incredibly afraid of what people were able to pull off in 2020.
Right.
And I'll say that the state of organization in Atlanta in 2020 is not what it is now. People are more class conscious. People are more conscious about the role of the police. There is just more working class organization in the city, period. There is a more militant spirit that's come out of the pro-Palestine movement, that's come out of the anti-police brutality and Cop City movement, that has come out of the immigrants' rights movement, and there's a lot more of intersection
Mm.
between this activism that is happening now, and they are worried about what power we have, and I will just say whatever gadgets they have, whatever fortresses they build out in the forest,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to stop when the people decide to stop letting them function.
That's
They
right.
can only go so far. I was there in City Hall a couple years ago when the people occupied City Hall, did refuse to let the city council leave their seats and force them to pass a resolution that would even allow for a petition for the referendum.
Oh
Now,
wow.
of course, that's how they kind of covered their asses, right?
Sure.
But I saw that happen. I saw, police say, "Oh, you can't bring water into the building," and then the police just get pushed aside by people bringing water into the building, normal people. I saw that when a group of mostly like elderly Black Atlantans decided to march on the Atlanta Police Foundation headquarters,
Oh.
not even a significant number, they
Mm-hmm.
boarded up the entire building.
They're so
Um,
scared.
they marched from Ebenezer Baptist Church, right? Like they marched like from like, it was the most,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was not a particularly rowdy gathering, and they were terrified. They were calling people that helped organize it, the mayor's office, like, what do we do? You have access. Don't do all this stuff. Don't make us look bad.
Wow.
So we are hurting these people's image, and we need to make it very clear which side the politicians are on, and that's
Mm-hmm.
including the Democrats. The Republicans are very obvious which side they're on.
Yeah.
And then once that is clear, we know who's on our side and we know who it isn't. We
Yeah.
build our forces, we marshal our forces, and when they come for us, we protect our people as best we can. And when we have wins, we're like, look, here's what we can win. And when we have losses, we say, look, here's why this system will never ultimately be enough for us despite the will of the people. So either way, we find a way to push forward. That's how it works, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Right.
It's pretty brutal out here.
It is, yeah. I appreciate all of that information, but also like you have a good realistic but like positive outlook
Mhm.
on this, because it is true that it's a lot and that like the cards are stacked against. I mean, the system is set up against us. But that understanding and like getting out there and talking and getting hundreds of thousands of signatures on something, like that is that community work. Like those people are already understanding what's at stake, and so they're ready essentially in a lot of ways for next steps. And that's
And
brilliant.
I will say that when people are shocked that the Democrats didn't win Georgia in 2024,
Hmm.
a lot of Biden voters from 2020 felt disillusioned with the entire process after
Right.
seeing how, first of all, how the Biden administration did, but
Mm-hmm.
second of all, how the local Democratic Party
Right.
functioned. And because I'll stress again, and I can talk all day about the Republican Party of Georgia, right? They're enemy number one here.
Mm-hmm.
But in Atlanta, this was the Democratic Party of Georgia
Right.
that was
Right.
spearheading this. The prosecutor, Democratic Party. The mayor, the all of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the most of the institutions they rolled out to defend this were trying to put a sort of liberal, if we have more police training, we'll be safer. Well, no, you're training with like machine guns, right? Like,
Right.
y'all set up a giant shooting range. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what to tell. So exactly, you're practicing pit maneuvers,
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
that's what I'll say. And so that is also when people are talking about like, oh, well, why is there this right turn? Well, there is a right turn and we can talk about it, but
Mm-hmm.
there is also just this question of, is this system designed to work for us at all? And what does participation in democracy look like? And it's the job of us who care and us who have an analysis
Mm-hmm.
to, instead of that, make that people check out, get people into a movement and activism, because that could just as well lead people over to the Republican side, or it could lead people to be like, all right, that's
Just check
it,
out.
going home.
Yeah.
And that's not what we want either.
No. Good. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so just moving from that, more police talk. You
Yes.
mentioned this earlier today, and I had to look it up because I hadn't even heard about this. This man, this thing that happened. Let's talk about Johnny Holman. Is that how you pronounce it?
Holman. Yeah.
Holman. Okay. Yeah. What happened with him? And like what is the state of that?
Yes. So just a couple of years ago, Johnny Holman is a deacon, or he was a deacon. He was in his early 60s. Was driving home from a Bible study on the phone with his daughter when he got pulled over by an Atlanta police officer. This was in the West End near Vine City in Georgia. This is right near like Spelman and Morehouse and Clark colleges, historically Black universities. This is not a mile from where Martin Luther King Jr. was born. This is in the heart of Black Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anywhere that there should be some kind of understanding, anything, but as we see, it's quite the opposite. The whole place is militarized when you go there. This is not but a couple blocks from one of the biggest organizing hubs in the city, which was the Atlanta Liberation Center, which has actually since shifted locations, but it was still there at the time. I mean, it was very, very brazen and and Johnny Holman gets pulled over. The police officer is trying to write him a ticket. And I apologize. Johnny Hallman gets in a minor wreck, and they try to write him a ticket.
Mm.
And they try to write him a ticket. He says he does not want to take the ticket. He's not being violent. He's not anything like that. He will not receive the ticket. There's no law that says you have to take the ticket from the officer's hand.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Says he won't receive it. He feels like the situation was BS. Still on the phone with his daughter, and he is violently assaulted by this officer, tased, and then a tow truck driver who is a former APD officer joins in holding him down while he has an asthma attack. They treat him very violently while he's having an asthma attack. He's tased, again, older man, and this officer's name is Kieran Kimbrough. Medical examiner called it a homicide when he died. Again, on the phone with his daughter. Taser restrained, and no CPR was attempted. Nothing. They let him die. And there was some investigation, but as of just a week ago, officially there's going to be no indictment of the officer. There was a fight to get any kind of footage released of the incident by Johnny Hallman's family and local organizations. I was present at a march a week afterwards with Johnny Hallman, some of his family, with his daughter, and I believe niece, where police officers, this was not a march of 50 people, this was small. And police officers rolled up, as many of them as there were with us, on bikes, making bike shields and shoving us back. And it was just like they felt this kind of impunity to act. They through the pressure of the public movement, consistently showing up to city council and calling out Andre Dickens directly. There was able to be some things like the release of footage, which, by the way, confirmed everything the family claimed. But that did not stop grand jury from refusing to indict this officer. And that is the state of where things are right now. It's been a movement that has unfortunately not gotten as much coverage. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I was involved. I've been involved in like people's journalism here, and there's been a lot of coverage of it from local Atlanta, like Atlanta radical journalism. But even trying to get outlets like the AJC, much less national outlets, but like even regional outlets like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that have some kind of pull to cover it, has been tough. And I, similar to the Breonna Greer murder a couple years before that, when you we've done call campaigns to the AJC, like, you have to cover this. This is your journalistic responsibility. And, they eventually do this or that. You basically get told in more or less words, Black Death is played. This is not sell anymore. We squeezed all the juice we could out of it. This is not in vogue anymore. Right. But it's like, people are dying at the same rate or higher than they were in 2020, being murdered by the police.
Oh, yeah.
Terror is high. Arrests are high. People are scared. And that was even all before Trump, before the ICE crackdowns, and things are even higher now. So that's the situation on that. And that is another reason that just the anger against police and the justice system, or so-called justice system in Georgia, is at an all-time high. And that's what's encouraging about it, is that, one, I've seen the families of those lost to police brutality are now meeting each other. They're coming together in organizing spaces. They're forming organization or joining organizations together. There's just been, over the last few weeks, forums that they're holding a bunch of family members of those murdered together, talking about it. And they're not talking about, I'm just going to tell you, they're not talking about, we got to primary Andre Dickens.
Right.
You can hear it. You hear it yourself if you're in Atlanta. You can come listen to them talk. I won't put words in their mouths. They know what needs to be done. And I was involved with, and I've been involved with marches, helping some of them. We marched with coffins in the streets. We've done so many different things. But ultimately, what it's going to take is grand systemic reform, because Atlanta has had periods with much more conservative leadership and much more supposedly liberal leadership, and that has not done a damn thing for the Black community here, and has not done a thing for police brutality in general. And so there's a lot of anger, but it has also led to this level of organization, and has also led to these movements are now linking up with the immigrants' rights struggle, because, of course, that is popping off everywhere. And I will say Folkestone ICE facility in Georgia, that's in South Georgia, a very small town. is, according to our governor, going to be the largest ICE detention facility in the United States. It's not gotten as much coverage as Alligator Alcatraz because it's not as flashy. It does not have alligators,
Yet.
but it is, yeah, but it is isolated.
Wow.
It is incredibly isolated, and I have been out there. And they're been to Folkestone. I've done door to door knocking on houses to find out just hey, how do people feel in this area about the prison? Folkestone does not have a hospital. Folkestone does not have many grocery stores. Folkestone does have what is about to be the largest ICE detention facility in the United States.
Wow.
Um, I met people who used to work at the prison who, it was a ICE detention facility and small prison. Now
Mm.
it's being big, quit out of disgust.
Hmm.
And there is basically a community now set up across from the prison just for people to work there. And it's like the
Hmm.
only nice place in town. It's crazy.
Of
Anyone,
course.
I don't
Yeah.
know the chances that anyone here has been to Folkestone because it's tiny, but if you have, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like out of a movie perfect suburb right
Mm.
across from the prison. You can see it. And then the rest of the town is old and has not been attended to. And I
Yeah.
mean, I was told by numerous people the line was, "Our only export here is our children,"
Oh
and and
God.
and 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 this and literally, except now it's also going to be revitalized
Right. As like
by
a company
quotes.
town for ICE.
Yes,
Oh,
and
that's
the
dark.
prison is privately owned by Geo Group, so it's also going to make money for a private corporation. And if you want a funny little cap on that, um, I am employed and I'm fine with my job, but you know how you get emails for like recruiters trying to
Mm.
like get you to apply for jobs or whatever, whether it's
Yeah.
a bullshit job or not, I don't know. I got an email for diversity coordinator at Geo Group, and I was like,
Diversity coordinator.
yeah, they were like $75,000 a year diversity coordinator at Geo
Gosh.
Group, and I was just like, what backwards
Mm.
world are we living in when
Mm.
that's what we're doing? We're gonna put like pronouns on inmates' jumpsuits before we depart them. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like,
Oh my God,
um,
that's dark.
so, but we have people that are going to that area. We've actually gotten people inside the prison to figure out the conditions, to report on the lies, because there were a lot of lies coming out about the detention facility and the
Hmm.
standards of living inside of it. We've
Mm.
managed to get people near to the fence, to talk to people, to get in touch with people's families that are being held in there,
Nice.
because a lot of people's like families aren't sure where they are.
Hmm.
Um, and if especially there's a language barrier, a lot of these people have trouble communicating. And even if there isn't a language barrier, you're technically supposed to have a right to a phone, but a lot of that goes out the window as soon
Right.
as you're in one of these isolated prisons. But they put the people way out there for a reason. They put
Mm.
people, 5 hours from Atlanta for a reason. And that's the situation there. And but like the anger's boiling over. There's been large protests in Atlanta that have gotten pretty hairy. The police have come down on them. People have fought back. I mean, I've seen it.
Hmm.
Um, and 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 they're overplaying their hand is what I would say.
Hmm.
There's been a series of protests out towards Buford Highway that has been which is a strong immigrant community here near Atlanta, that have been militant and strong, and the police have had to shut down massive highways for hours at a time. And they've been, I mean, they were putting guys with guns up on top of the police were up on top of like restaurants like McDonald's and stuff, waiting for the protest, for these
Wow.
protests to come through.
Yeah.
And cracking down. And I mean, I'm just saying, I've seen it, and I'm not naming names, but I've seen like the police throw their tear gas and it gets chucked right back at them by like
Good. Yeah.
just young people and, and
Hmm.
and older people too. It's not just that. It's people are getting mad and frustrated, and there is a growing sense of that discontent. And the
Hmm.
police have cracked down so hard that they were like, I'm not kidding, the Buford Highway protests afterwards, for like an hour afterwards, just stopping random people who looked like they could have been at a protest and bringing them in.
Wow.
They arrested a couple of teenagers that were attending that were at a Planet Fitness, that they were like coming out like from their workout, wiping off. Just a couple
Yeah.
teenagers, Hispanic teenagers. They were like, they look like they could have been at an immigrants' right protest.
Right.
Bring them
Yeah.
in. And I'll note also that because of new laws here in Georgia, they can arrest you for wearing a mask at a protest. It does not
Mm.
matter if it's a medical mask. It does not matter what excuse you make, whether it's real or not.
Mm.
You can, not that you should need a medical reason.
Right.
You should be able to wear a mask if you please.
Yeah.
Um, But they've just, I mean, I've seen people like they were just like, oh, well, I'm immunocompromised, like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And they're just like, if you don't take off that mask, I'm going to arrest you. And they have arrested people for wearing masks at protests as
Right.
well. And so
Except
that is also a
ICE
trend.
can wear them. That's fine,
Yes. Oh,
right? Yeah.
God. And they do.
Yes.
So that's what we're dealing with. And I'm not saying all of this to try to just compound the horrors we're dealing with. I'm trying to say this is the type of police state they're trying to build
Right. Everywhere.
because see, yes, everywhere, but
Yeah.
because they see the level of the because that's the only alternative because
Mm.
there's no more juice left in this thing. They don't have um the rate of profit has fallen for the United States. The United
Mm-hmm.
States, imperial machine is not functioning the way it does. The propaganda is not working as well as it does. The standard of living has fallen, and they're not doing anything meaningful to help.
Mm-hmm.
And the world, and it's becoming increasingly isolated on the world stage. What happens? What happens when you deal with that? You turn to fascism, and that's
Mm-hmm.
we've seen that every time. But
Mm-hmm.
fascism is also a response to that insecurity. So we should not think that them doing this is a sign of strength. If they felt very confident that they were popular and everything that you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they would not have to do all
They
of
wouldn't have
this.
to do
And
that.
so,
Yep. Yeah.
so that's what I'll say on that. And there's a lot of work to be done, but I
Yeah.
feel strongly that they feel insecure and honestly weak because I've seen these politicians. I've met some of them not under friendly circumstances, and they're terrified and they don't want to
Yes.
talk to their constituents and they
Right.
are, um, and even the police like when they're outnumbered, the second they're outnumbered,
Mm-hmm.
they are terrified. I
Yeah.
mean, um, and it's at the point where they're, yeah, and it's at the point where they're being opposed on so many different fronts, and
Mm-hmm.
it cannot hold.
When I was reading about Johnny Holman earlier, 62-year-old man, what I read, the article I scanned was like tased to death. I didn't
Yes,
come to the part. He also had an asthma attack, right? And just like
yeah,
back before my like full radicalization, you would see some of these videos or like people that were even if they weren't like shot by the police, but they were having some sort of medical emergency. And as someone who's been like first aid and CPR certified for like 20 years, it's like a class I just take every 2 years. I have to do it for my job. Like, it was always like mind blowing to me to be like, there would be somebody bleeding out or like passed out, and they go and cuff them, this like passed out body, rather than like checking their airway at doing CPR. Like, I was always like, why don't the cops ever, do they not teach them how to do this? And it's like, no,
mhm,
like, it's because saving this person's life was never the point. Like, helping them was never the point, and that's why you never see it. You will never see a police officer, check on somebody's head injury and like administer CPR
mhm.
if necessary.
And they'll make all kinds of excuses for why, right? Like
Safety. It's
most of
always
the
about their
time,
safety.
right? But in this case, and I want to preface this by no one deserves to be murdered by the police, even people guilty of crimes, right?
Right.
That's not the police's job.
Right.
But what more of a perfect victim do you want than a
Right.
62-year-old deacon driving home from Bible study in his own community?
Right.
What more do you want? Like from someone that like there it was just existing while being a black man in the United
Yeah.
States and there was nothing else to it. That's and so that's just to say, and that's what his family, by the way, has been very principled, standing up for other families as well.
Nice.
And but I will also say just straight up, like if there's any question of, well, that person was doing this, they were doing that, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
Who do you want better than Johnny Hallman? If Johnny Hallman
Right.
deserves it, then every one of us in this country deserves it. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Like, you don't have to be a perfect victim to deserve to not be murdered, but this guy actually is, and he still
Actually is,
got
yes.
murdered. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you need the proof, there it is.
There it is. Yeah. So, I don't have any happy things to talk about, so we're going to continue on this path.
Yeah.
Georgia has abortion laws very similar to those in Texas, basically like a heartbeat bill. So once a heart, quote unquote, basically like electric signals are able to be noticed, you cannot have an abortion. Texas doesn't have a caveat for incest or rape. I don't know if Georgia does.
We
But
technically do, and
it's
that's
impossible to prove.
very, very difficult, and you have a
Yeah.
very narrow window with which to do it.
Right. So it's like going through the whole rape kit testing trial before you even hit any sort of
Right.
arbitrary line is like damn near impossible. So those things really aren't actual carve outs. I wanted to talk a little bit about the abortion laws in Georgia, because a woman named Adriana Smith made national headlines earlier this year when she had a stroke at 9 weeks pregnant, and basically, what's the most well, everything about this is horrible. But one of the things that really stuck out to me is that this was the hospital that she worked at. Adriana Smith was a nurse at this
Hmm.
hospital and was still treated this way, right? Like these are her coworkers. These are people who knew her as a person. And this is still, if anybody doesn't know, basically, she had that stroke. She was brain dead. They kept her corpse, quote unquote, alive for several months until they could remove the fetus, and I really haven't heard much about it since then. Do you have any information on anything like that? Or like,
Yeah.
is the baby alive? I don't know.
That's I'm actually not aware. I heard that the baby was alive
Yeah,
at first. I don't know. Um, I think the family would wants privacy on some
I'm
of that,
sure. I'm
and
sure.
her
Yeah.
family has been through hell.
Yes.
And many members of her family have done advocacy on this, but it's been a devastating thing. Out of a horror movie, really.
Yes.
Um, I'll say just our law in Georgia in general. I mean, we've had a number of preventable deaths due to things like ectopic pregnancies and stuff like that have gone
Hmm.
bad. We have a woman like Amber Thurman who died, who was basically refused medical care,
Wow.
and certainly more that we don't know the names of. Um, this has been this has been tough. Georgia in Georgia is a conservative state in a lot of ways, but we have a lot of even kind of conservative people can often have sometimes good ideas about the economy or this that or
Hmm.
the other, can be won over on certain things.
Hmm.
On this issue, Georgia, it's very tough. It is very tough to make headway in Georgia on this issue. I'm just gonna be very frank.
Hmm.
Including even in people that can often be progressive allies on other things.
Hmm.
Um, that said, there's work on it.
Hmm.
There is mobilization. I mean, it protests are one thing that happens, but there's been consistent mobilizations to try to push our Supreme Court to make better decisions, our Georgia Supreme Court and
Hmm.
Georgia federal courts. That there's been talk of, oh well, you shouldn't actually try to politicize the judiciary. Whatever, the judiciary is political. We're going to
Right.
show up and put direct pressure on them, and that has allowed what stays we have gotten, what
Mm.
limits on the laws have all come from judges.
Mm.
Um, and so that kind of work has been useful. They have pretty much been able to chip by chip get away from all of that. Um, one thing that is has to happen or and has been happening is things like mutual aid
Hmm.
networks, to when somebody needs to get out of state for whatever reason, they need to get out of state.
Hmm.
Whatever pills they need to get, they need to get. I'm just gonna say, like, I am not. That's going to continue to happen whether
Yeah.
or not, whether whatever laws they have.
Hmm. Hmm.
As for the people affected, it's horrible, and it's our responsibility to tell their stories. I know ATL Radical Art has been doing, and I mean, it feels almost like trying to put out a fire with a thimble, but telling the stories of these women, with their, and I know people are bringing their families, people who have died or people who have suffered,
Hmm.
are trying to do that. We're trying. There's also campaigns against these crisis pregnancy centers that are
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
all evangelical cutouts. There are those receive a significant amount of state funds here in
Hmm.
Georgia, which is
Texas
something
as
that's
well.
been,
Yep.
yes, that's been worked on. Um, so there's a variety of work on that, but honestly, on this issue, and there may be people who disagree. I think the main thing we can accomplish right now is setting up networks to take care of our people ourselves, because I do not see people shifting on this. I do
Yeah.
not see the way the Georgia legislature is set up. It is unbelievably rigged. Even the way, even by like, obviously under capitalism, all legislative politics are compromised, but even by those standards, voter rolls are regularly purged. There's so
Wow.
many people who can't vote in this state. There's so many. I mean, even when Brian Kemp was running for president, sorry, God forbid. Even when Brian Kemp was running for governor, he, wouldn't step down from his Georgia Secretary of State position,
Right.
oversaw the election, which
Right.
he,
His own election.
you know, obvious, yeah, the election that was very close, interesting, right?
Yeah.
Um, there is, so I think, yes, we should continue to try and change the law here, and we should pressure judges, and we should do what we can, but we need to set up networks for our own people, and that's being done. And a lot of that is not going to be flashy and not going to be on Instagram,
Right. You can't.
for
Yeah.
obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And if you live in a state like Georgia, you live in Georgia, you don't need permission to start doing that.
Right.
Find people believe in that and get it. Start doing it, and that includes, by the way, the responsibility is on medical professionals, doctors, nurses, all of you that can. I understand, there's a risk. I understand professionally, but like there is a responsibility, especially, if you took the Hippocratic Oath or
Right.
that need to follow up. And I know there are specialists here in Georgia that are
Yes.
risking themselves and fighting back, and we need to do that. So that's where we're at on that. But I think that it's going to be very tough with the way things are nationally and the way things are legislatively. That said, we're going to continue to put pressure on it. We're going to continue to do education just so the culture and the feeling around what around this in general changes. But it is a thing where we need to take care of our people.
Yes. And I just want to tack on to that. I have an episode 21 is called Penny Royalty, where I talk to a friend who's an herbalist. And there are a lot of resources in that episode shared on how to make herbal tinctures that can induce your period. And because this is something that people have been doing for centuries on their own. Obviously, modern medicine has helped a lot, but without that modern medicine or with it being criminalized, we can go back to some of these ancient ways. And these things are, you can buy these herbs, you can grow these herbs. There are things that people can still do to help control their fertility. So shout out to the herbalists.
And I'll note too that like things like mutual aid networks and just people helping each other, is also required for people who do have families, who do choose to have children, and because there's no help coming from the state,
right,
for them.
Yeah, they'll make you keep that pregnancy, but they will not give you health care for that baby or for yourself or education.
And they will. And if that kid, looks at a police officer the wrong way,
they'll just shoot him.
They could end up shot or on a RICO charge or whatever. We or if they live in Vine City, they more than likely have lead poisoning. I mean, I could go on and on. This is not, I doubt anyone listening to this show needs convincing, but it's worth repeating when you're having this conversation with people who need convincing.
Yeah.
And you have to. This is something that we have to make a point of, and we have to stress that there is no interest in these people's lives. They're interested in basically just the natalist project, essentially, which is very different than being pro-family or pro-life at all.
Yes. Okay, so moving on. This is actually something I don't know anything about in the state of Georgia, but I'm going to assume the worst. Sorry. What is the current state of queer, but like specifically trans rights in the state? Texas has been, of course, actively attacking trans people. Adults, they're making it impossible to change your gender marker on your IDs now. And as far as trans kids go, it hasn't passed yet, but it likely will. Even with parent permission, they're making it to where like teachers cannot call kids by their preferred name or pronouns. They're basically forcing detransition here. How's the state of trans rights in Georgia?
Yes. So we are in a similar boat. I would say that we're a couple steps better than Texas, but not by a whole lot.
Just lagging behind a little bit.
Yeah. People like to joke. It's like, well, next to Florida. And I'm like, right, but we do everything Florida does a year later. So like,
Same.
let's not
Yeah.
get on our high horse,
I
right?
feel like Texas and
Um,
Florida are always in competition to see who can be the most
mhm.
suppressive. Yeah.
Yep. Um, and I honestly think that yeah, it's a thing I put forward. And Mariah, I think, even talks about it in the No Cop City, No Cop World book. But also, like enforcing some of that stuff on Georgia is a
Hmm.
laboratory for it working on like a lot of these like cities that a city like Atlanta,
Right.
you can enforce it there. You can
Right.
enforce it just about anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Um, Exactly. And I know there are cities, of course, like that in Texas, especially, like somewhere like Austin or something like that, where it's like, theoretically, this should be a difficult urban center to enforce this on, but,
Right. And
you know,
and they already arrested a midwife in Houston for performing abortions. So
yes.
they're finding these people. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the state of queer rights here is looks quite a bit like that.
Mm.
You have teachers definitely being suppressed too for even trying to have educational resources. These school boards, there's been a lot of grassroots or really astroturfed right wing
Mm.
campaigns to take
Hmm.
over school boards. They've actually had much less success than I think they expected they would,
That's good.
because parents think they're weird. That's actually like been one of the biggest things is like
I love that.
normal parents being like, this is really weird,
These
y'all. Like
people
this
are
is
very
strange.
off-putting. Yeah.
Um, like
They
that's
can't
a
help
thing that
it.
I've seen, like trying to help. And I don't have any children or whatever, but like trying to help with resources for these people. They just very often like, why are these people coming in and screaming about like kids' genitals so
Yeah.
often? Like,
Right.
why? Like that's weird. You are a freak for that.
Yeah.
Like even if you're not ideologically committed,
Hmm.
that's just a strange thing to do.
It really
Um,
is. Yeah.
in the Georgia State Legislature, it is now the case in Georgia that they did make it the case that if you work for the state, there is not a whole lot of coverage through insurance for trans
Mm.
people and trans family. That's becoming similar ways if you get through like Peach Care or something like that, which is like our Medicaid. Not that that's doing great in general.
Hmm.
Um, there's not quite the level of forced transition yet, at least on legally, but they're building up to that probably for
Right.
the next legislative session in February. It was actually narrowly, it was it didn't not pass this past legislative session so much as like it wasn't voted down, but it actually ended up not fully coming to a vote. I credit a lot of work that was done by activists on that, a lot of disruption that was done, the realization that they had projects they wanted to pull off, the Georgia legislator did, and that if they wanted to pull off their anti-trans project, they were going to have to make it their whole thing, and
Mm.
like their because there was going to be so much trouble for them.
Hmm.
I will say the Democratic Party of Georgia very rarely shows a spine, but there were members of the Democratic Party of Georgia in the legislature that walked out over this issue when they were trying to have when that in protest and stopped basically there being a vote at one point. We appreciate that.
Hmm.
We appreciate that's why I'm revolutionary, but I say like if you want to vote for progressive, go for it. Just make sure that's not
Yeah.
what you do with most of your
Yeah. No,
that
credit
was
where it's
useful.
due for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And also that comes though from their constituents consistently holding them accountable, and we have
Right.
to do that while also aiming for a new system.
Hmm.
So that is where we're at a lot of that.
Okay.
There is really a fight around. A lot of the fight is cultural and social, and for hearts and minds right now, and for treatment of people. And I have seen this as anecdotal, but as a gay man, in living in the city, that there was just much more comfort with homophobia and
Hmm.
transphobia. I don't think people have become more. I think
Hmm.
that they've become louder, and I think they feel more confident under this current administration in
Yeah.
particular.
Hmm.
Um, but that the fight has to go back. It has to be. I mean, I think art has a lot to do with that. There's been a lot of like Atlanta is a hub of queer art and
Hmm.
culture that has. There's been continuing to be a lot of cool stuff with that. There's been a lot of education, and there's just been a lot of like we need to be just like loud and proud about who we are, and also about protecting our people, and we
Hmm.
need to be uncompromising on that. Um, Not just a bit people are like, oh well, they'll come for trans people first and then they'll come for, even if they're not coming for anyone else, that's not acceptable that they're going to
Right.
come for trans people,
Right.
like But like I'll also note like yeah that it doesn't stop at that. I like to point out that like what was I think the biggest tell for the Labour Party in Britain's rightward turn. Well, it was Palestine, it was trans rights, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
give on those things, you suddenly those issues that they're like, well, we can give it on this, and it's like, yeah, they're indistinguishable now from their
Yep.
conservatives over there, even probably more than our Democrats are from our Republicans. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into British politics. I'm just saying they're like that was the big turn there for a
Yes.
formerly solid progressive party,
Mm-hmm.
not solidly progressive.
Yeah.
So that is also just something that we can never compromise on,
Mm-hmm.
and we cannot allow. And a lot of that battle has to be for hearts and minds, because a lot of it comes down to our community supportive of their people, our family supportive of their children,
Mm-hmm.
our our children supportive of their parents, or I
Yeah.
mean all of that combined, and when there is direct violence, when there is vigilante violence, is there a community that can step up and protect their people? Do people feel empowered to do that? And the answer is not as much as they should, but more than they once did. And we're going to continue to shift that. And I want to say too, like, while things seem dire on that,
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but think of like, queer comrades who are much older, who have been in the struggle for a long time, like to talk about that we have come a long way, especially on culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that has not been by accident. That has
Mm-hmm.
not been handed to us by Hollywood or by the Democrats or by anyone. That has been won by activism, by blood, sweat, and tears. And they're going to try and take back our rights, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to win back the cultural battle that they have lost. And they're also in that we have to, it is our responsibility to continue to wage that struggle for hearts and minds, and also to then translate that into organizing. We need to build queer organization, militant queer organization that is not tied to the Democratic Party, that is not tied to, just like trying to get grants, and that is not tied to, like, I don't know, Atlanta Pride. Go to it if you want, but like Lockheed Martin
Right.
is a huge sponsor of it, right? Like we have to have our own stuff. We had Mateo from the Rainbow Collective on a few weeks ago to talk about some of the writings of Leslie Feinberg, but he also spoke at some length about some of the queer organizing that's happened here in North Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I highly recommend you check out that episode on our show if you're interested in some of that, and how that's being done in a context that's different than Atlanta. But in the Atlanta context, that's what we're trying to build. And I'll say too that there's new initiatives that are getting underway right now that I'm very excited about,
Nice.
that are really linking up the queer struggle to the anti-imperialist struggle,
Oh yeah.
and to the immigrant rights struggle. I mean, this has to be linked up. And I guess the last thing I'll say on this, I may have already said that once, but this is actually the last thing I'll say on this, is um, I want to acknowledge that like especially queer youth have been like and I think this is around all around the country, but really in Atlanta have been at the vanguard of militant movements here in the
Mm-hmm.
city, over the last few years, at the vanguard of the Palestine movement, which is a remarkable. I love seeing very visibly queer people hand in hand with the Arab community, like forming these bonds, these like real bonds that like I love seeing. You know, um, I love the kind of work that's been done. I love that they've been there. They've been the fight against Cop City. I mean, Tortuguita was non-binary and
Mm-hmm.
murdered by the police here. That, and I want
Yeah.
to speak that as well. That like the queer community has been there for other communities as well. And I'm not just saying because I'm part of it, but we have to be there for the queer community as well, and we have to be there for specifically in this moment our trans siblings,
Mm-hmm.
because that is who they feel they can take right now,
And
and
if
that
for
is why
no
they're doing it.
yeah, if for no other reason, right? Like even if you aren't trans or queer and don't care about that, like all of these struggles are connected and ignoring one hurts all of it. So like get your shit together and support your queer comrades. God damn it.
Yeah, and I will say, like last year at Pride, despite all the weapons contractors, we got a bunch of people together to march in the Pride parade unofficially. We just like showed up, looked like you
Shut
were
up.
supposed to be there, didn't pay
Good.
any fee, because why would you do that?
God, it's
It's
so
our city.
expensive too. It's
Um,
crazy.
yeah,
They charge so
yeah,
much for
it's
that shit. Yeah.
it's our city. Who paid for these streets, right? And
Right.
with banners that were just like it was queer flags, and then flags of countries like Palestine for the most part, and
Nice.
signs that were just like talking about being against empire and being
Hmm.
against U.S. out of the Middle East and stuff like that. And that got huge cheers. That was from the just people there to attend. There was
Yeah.
a lot of excitement around that. People wanted that. People were chanting for that.
Good.
People were. That was a real. Now there were, that was a real like that is a feeling in the community. So I also don't want people to think like, oh, well, yeah, queer culture has been so co-opted. Well, it's as co-opted as we let it be.
There
So
you go.
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not gonna accept that.
Yes. Nice. Okay, so I feel like we kind of organically talked a lot about the on the ground work that you're involved in, but I wanted to specifically touch on this organization that you recently joined called All Out Against Empire. Would you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, not a lot to say. I actually recently was involved in kind of founding it.
Nice.
Um, it is kind of the conglomeration of several people from several not previous movements, ongoing movements, people who have been in different roles in the movements across Atlanta. And there's going to be a lot of work to come that's connected to reclaiming the radical queer struggle in Atlanta, fighting against because all out, right? It's kind of gay. But anybody can be part of it. But like to say that. So the fight against pink washing, we're going to fight to get weapons contractors out of Pride and out of our spaces. And again, I think a big part of our work is to expose who's on our side and who isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to be done. Trying to mobilize queer youth, trying to get anti-imperialist literature in queer spaces like bars and events and stuff. Because like I said, queer culture, Atlanta is a huge nexus of queer culture.
Mm-hmm.
Our music scene, our literary scene, a lot of that. We want to get that involved. We want that kind of thing to be a conscious effort and want to be able to organize and mobilize people towards doing that in a variety of ways, everything from direct action to education towards getting linking up with other organizations doing various work. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we are trying to bring together disparate movements
Mm.
that need unity. And we are trying to, in some ways, reignite to radical spirit. And want to, the first openly, to my knowledge, the first openly queer organization in Atlanta was the Gay Liberation Front
Mm.
back in the 70s.
Nice.
That they were marching with the flags of Vietnam,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
some of the time, like which they because they understood the intersection of empire and queer rights and the fight that the imperial fight against queer rights. And one that I'll say is the empire. The United States has always oppressed queer people here and around the world. But even if we could get a United States that didn't, we won't. Let me be clear. We
Mm-hmm.
won't. But let's say there was a United States that somehow became, uh, you know, perfect, whatever. We won't accept, rainbow fascism either.
Right. Right.
That's not happening. So not that's not going to be allowed either. But I also tell people to be clear, they're not going to give you rainbow fascism even if they promise it.
Right.
But we don't accept that. And I'd say the vast majority of queer working class people don't accept that either.
Yeah.
So that's the fight going forward.
Hell yeah, I love that. Okay, so before I get you to drop your plugs and anything else that you wanted to add, I wanted to get some book recommendations from you. Literally just because this is what you do for your podcast is you read a lot. You talk about books. So if you could give me, and you can do whatever you want, but I was gonna ask for like a piece of theory that you find very, very valuable and like a work of fiction that you love for whatever reason.
For sure. And then can I throw in a third bonus one
Hell yeah,
as well?
please.
Okay. The work of theory is Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. I think people need to read it.
Yes.
You need to understand the context in which it exists, of course, the level of organization they had versus the level of organization we have, right?
Yeah.
You need to know about the Black Panthers, at least read their Wikipedia page before you read this book.
Yeah.
But please read more than that. Um, but I think it's important to talk about the strength of the struggle, his analysis of fascism, how it works, how it changes, him talking about how fascism and reform are linked,
Mm-hmm.
his frank discussion of what a revolutionary period has to look like,
Mm-hmm.
his discussion of how people love to quote the violent sections from Blood in My Eye, but
Sure.
his discussion also of how much and that's fine, that's great. But also discussion of how many other types of work are necessary for any
Right.
kind of anything to happen.
Right.
His discussion of the need for, I mean, he uses the term black commune at the time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the power of a party, or organization or coalition of organizations,
Mm-hmm.
his belief in the capacity of individuals, even uneducated previously individuals, to take power into their hands, the way he sees the struggle for freedom in the United States as part of the international struggle, specifically the black struggle as an internal colony in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And in just the passion with which he wrote, knowing that it was from a prison cell, that he finished this book mere weeks before he was murdered by the U.S. government,
Mm-hmm.
I think is an all-timer, and I think it's a book for our era. And I note that he says, if we don't do the revolution soon, writing 1971, we're going to have to wait until the fascists have an uncharacteristic fit of madness. And unfortunately, we did not do the revolution soon, but I do think we maybe have come to the fit of madness.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at like Donald Trump and the ruling class, we maybe, it sucks that we had to get this far, but
Right.
he did throw out there that he says that we have a window right now that will close, but also there will be a future fit of madness, and
Mm-hmm.
be ready for it. And so I think that is something that we should look at. Two, work of fiction. It is a Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I think people need to read that.
Okay.
Parable of the Sower is set in the mid 2020s. She wrote it in the 1990s. It is a work of dystopian fiction, but it is basically a work where it is about a girl growing up in a sort of not officially but unofficially balkanized United States. That is, with increasing climate disaster, increasing social decay, there has not been any one apocalypse. There's just a series of tiny apocalypses. And it's about navigating that. It's about building community despite that. And it's about creating a new framework with which to communicate with each other. In this book, this girl, Lorna Lamina, makes a religion called Earthseed that is essentially just dialectics, which is awesome. Like, it is essentially just dialectics with like religious language to give people a new framework with which to communicate with each other. And so I think that it's important. You really should read Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. It's a duology, really back to back. Parable
Okay.
of the Talents features a president in the 2030s whose slogan is "Make America Great Again," written in 1995.
Jesus.
We beat Octavia Butler to the punch on that. We were, 15 years early or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it also shows the power of organization and is very whatever. I will note it's not for the faint of heart, but I highly recommend it. We've done episodes on both of those books on our podcast, but I'll say if you're choosing between listening to the book episode on my podcast and reading the book, you should read the book every time. Do not I do not feel the same about the Hillbilly Elegy episode. You can just listen to the episode. You don't need to read J.D. Vance's fucking book.
You don't need to read the book. Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say is just absolutely shameless, but I have a book coming out in December. It's called They Called Her Rebel. And it is a fantasy novel about revolution. If you like Socialist Revolution, if you like fantasy novels, if you like alcoholic orcs, if you like dwarves with shotguns, if you like lesbians with superpowers, or if you like, street brawls against fascists. This book has all of that and more. I'm really excited about it. I really brought a lot of my organizing experience into my love of fantasy, which is like a thing I've loved since a kid. Everything from, Lord of the Rings to N.K. Jemisin, all of that was a thing I loved. And I was able to, through this story, kind of fuse those things into something that I think works. Really could use people's support. So that's available for order and comes out December 9th. I think the book cover looks really cool. I didn't design the book cover. They designed it. My publisher designed it. And it's like a red fist with like light coming out of it. Like, it's sick. They picked it out of my brain. It's awesome. So I'm really excited about that book. So if people are interested and it's a lighter read than Parable of the Sower, if you're looking for fiction, highly would ask humbly that you pre-order it or check it out, or once it's out, if you're not there financially, request your local library pick it up or something like that. I'm going to
ask you to give me a link.
Yes, I will. And if for some reason you don't have a local library and you don't have the funds, email me. I can find a way to get a PDF into your hands. Folks, listen.
Hell yeah.
I want you to read the book regardless. That's what it's about.
Okay, hell yeah. I'll get a pre-order link to add to the bottom of this for sure.
Fantastic.
Very cool. I did not know you were also a writer. I love this. Glad I asked that question. Okay, anything else that you think that we missed? Something that you think that people need to know about you, about what's going on in Georgia, or just anything else you wanted to throw out there?
Yeah, I what I would say is the state of Georgia has a lot of challenges that people here are committed to fighting. There's a lot of a lot of stereotypes about what we're like. And what we are is what we're like everywhere. We're a bunch of working class people. We have a repressive ruling class. We are dealing with the same challenges as everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of people who are committed to fighting back. So if you live in Georgia or you don't, you need to join an organization or you need to get organized in some capacity,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that looks like for your specific circumstances. You need to be reading, studying. You need to be doing it with other people. None of us can do anything alone. None of us are superheroes. If we were, then we could get it done um, ourselves, and that would be lovely. It's going to be a lot of work, but we can win. We can accomplish things, and there are dark things on the horizon. There are dark things that have occurred, but they only happen because this is, capital's response to the challenges that it cannot solve. It does. There are so many contradictions that have opened up based on the challenges that capitalism has brought into existence, and it cannot solve them. The only way to solve them is with the people's movement, with a
Mm.
different society, and they would rather let the world burn than have that new society. But what I'll say is that we can win, and the more the contradictions sharpen, the more people will be brought into struggle. People who right now you talk to that laugh you off, you are planting seeds, you are building framework. I promise you, there is a lot to come. So that's it for Georgia, and that's it for everywhere. So yeah, definitely humbly request you check out the book. If you want to check out Socialist Shelf, that's great. But above all, organize yourself. That's the most important thing I can say to anybody.
Hell yeah, and I will have links to some of the Cop City Bail funds, the Mariah Parker book, your book, and if All Out Against Empire has a website, I will link that as well so that people can join up or
Not at the time of this
not
recording, but
yet.
we'll
Okay,
talk about it. We'll see.
we'll figure that out.
I it depends when you release the episode.
That's fair. Probably in a couple of weeks. Next week, I
Maybe
think.
then. Maybe.
Maybe by then.
Very
Yeah, but you
possibly.
know what? Join whatever is available in your town, your suburb, your city. People are always like, "Oh, well, we don't have a Vanguard party. Oh, CPUSA is flawed. Oh, DSA is too big tent. Oh, PSL has these problems." Yes, obviously, all of these organizations have fucking problems.
Hmm.
If they did, we would be doing the damn thing. Like, if there was a
Yes.
perfect organization, if we already had the Vanguard party, we would be further along right now. And like, it's okay that we don't. You join what closest fits what you want to do, and you struggle to make it more radical, more revolutionary. I do mutual aid here.
Yes.
We are a red mutual aid group. And like, is it perfect? No, but like, we're trying to fill in this gap where we can and educate people that are willing to talk to us. And like, that's literally all you have to do to get started. It's a low
Yep.
barrier to entry to start organizing. So
Hmm.
do it.
And what I'll say too is, you know, less than a year before the Russian Revolution, Lenin said he would not live to see the Russian
He didn't think
Revolution.
it was about to
Um,
happen. Yeah,
and
exactly.
the party itself was small, and I won't say it was isolated. They were around, but
Mm-hmm.
the moment came where I said a lot of people, a lot of seeds that had been planted, drew people into the streets, and a lot of work paid off in ways that
Yep.
was unprecedented. And that is the case with every revolution. Every revolution in history has been impossible, and then afterwards it was called inevitable. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
say, if you told the story of the American Revolution that is coming, people will say, well, it was inevitable. They kicked 14 million people off healthcare. Well,
Right.
they were militarizing. They were arresting people in the dead of night. All that.
Mm-hmm.
You are living in the time and seeing the things that make these kind of things supposedly inevitable, but they are not. You have agency, but not by yourself. You have agency with other people. So let's get her done.
Well, yeah, let's get her done. All right, y'all. Jacob, you stay on the line for a second, but I'm gonna pull this to a conclusion. So thanks for listening,
For
everybody,
sure, for sure.
and cheers, y'all. Greetings, comrades.